senior project, the Cobalt Dream. So, again, as a caller, musician and an engineer, and I have a passion for electronic music and synthesizers. And for the past 5 years, I've been learning to use making electronic music with synthesizers. And this project of mine has been in the works for 9 months, and it's my own synthesizer design called the Cobalt Dream. I've started from scratch from everything, sourcing the schematics, designing to integrate them all together, and the actual mechanical assembly of it. It's all been me. I'm almost entirely self-taught. Exciting. So let's go over what the actual Cobalt Dream is, because there's no video yet, but there will be a video demo after. So the Cobalt Dream is an electronic musical instrument. It's loosely based on the Roland SH-101, which is a vintage synthesizer from the 80s. It follows the Eurorack standard for power, audio, control voltages, etc., which was developed by Dumper in 1996. It's basically a modular format that fits into a box, a bunch of other modules where you physically make connections. Additionally, it's a semi-modular synth voice, so it's going to look something like this guy over here on the right, which is the Intelligo Atlantis. It's where it has jacks on the front and you make connections. And it'll be able to fit into a case and be much smaller. Slide. So let's go over how I constructed the prototype just a little bit. Next slide. So most of the prototype is constructed on strip board or barrel board, which is basically like a breadboard with soldered in connections. There are copper traces on one big board with a bunch of holes, and electrical components are stuck in and then soldered with liquid metal to make electrical connections, which lets you translate all the schematics into a physical prototype that works. And there are different boards for every module, which are just the different specialized parts of the synthesizer that make it work. Then there are panel components. On the far right here, you see a potentiometer, which is basically a knob that's used. There are switches, which are just, like a light switch. And then jacks, which are it's a mono audio jack, kind of like what you would plug into your phone, but with only one channel. And those are used for both control voltages and the audio out of the system. Next slide. So I'm going to go over a quick little overview of the module list. There's an oscillator that generates sound, a mixer that takes those sounds and mixes them together, a filter which lets you add, subtract harmonics and change the timbre of the sound, an envelope generator which controls the contour of both the filter and the volume, low pass gate, which makes it when you're not pressing a key, you don't hear anything, and then an LFO, which lets you do some modulation of oscillator parameters for more interesting stuff. So if we go next, I'm just going to go over each individual thing, and here I actually have the prototype so I can give a sound demo of every part as we hear it. So this is the oscillator. The oscillator it's a voltage-controlled oscillator. It's the very heart of the synth. It produces everything the very starting point. It has 3 base audio waveforms, a triangle, a square, and a saw, and it's controlled with a 1 volt per octave scaling. So if you want to hear each individual waveform, we have the saw first. Right here, it's very soft. There's that's the triangle, the saw, a little buzzier, a square, which is also kind of buzzy. These can be controlled with a master tune knob, which basically changes the bass pitch, and then also controlled by a keyboard. So there's a little bit of reverb on there just to lush up the sound. And that lets you play it musically, like an instrument. Last thing is that there is also, on the square wave, there is a pulse width, which changes the width between the peaks of the square. It makes an interesting effect, and we'll talk about that more later. So for the next slide, we've got the mixer. So the mixer makes it so that each of those individual waveforms can be mixed together, and you can hear all of them. Additionally, on the oscillator, there are also 2 extra waveforms, 2 sub ones, which are down an octave from either. So we've got the square, sub, minus 2 sub. But obviously you want to hear all of those at the same time for it to, sound the best. So the mixer lets us take all of these. And hear all of them at the same time, which lets us just get a more full sound. Additionally, the mixer is equipped with 5 different inputs in between. You can see them here as these little weird circle jacks above these colored wires. But on the actual prototype, there are 5 different jacks on the panel. And these let you control the volume using an external source, such as something that is modular from the same Eurorack format. So I have a module here that just goes up and down in a sine wave. And what we can do is we can use that to vary the volume of our square wave, for instance. Going up and down. And that actually, control is available simultaneously on every channel. So you can make some very interesting phasing effects with just another simple module. The knobs that the mixer just fade in and out. So that lets you get even more harmonic complexity and work with your level synthesizers better. So next slide, please. Next, we've got the filter. The filter is a very character of the synth. It takes your bass oscillator sound and it just softens it up and makes it so much nicer. It's a resonant low-pass filter based on Robert Furtick's Benjamin filter, and it's very, very nice and buttery. You know, so if we turn up the square wave, we can hear it. Basically, it softens the sound and makes it so that it's kind of coming from a square and more into a sine. It's rounding off those harsh edges and those high harmonics. And it only lets the low pass, which is why it's called a low-pass filter. Additionally, it has resonance. The resonance gives it that filter sound, which is so characteristic of synthesizers. But, you know, turning the knob sounds nice, but it would be also nice if you could just press a thing and it would turn the knob for you. So that's why we have, next slide, the envelope generator. The envelope generator generates an envelope, a contour, and that is used to both shape the amplitude, the volume of the sound, and the filter. So if we turn up the filter again, so far as you've been hearing it, when I press a key, it's on. When I let go of the key, it's off. The envelope lets us add a little bit of release, decay, attack to that, so you can press it, and it will trail off. And if you turn down sustain, you can make plucky little plucky blip loops, or you can use the attack to kind of make more big, long swells. Additionally, the envelope generator can sweep the filter for us using a modulation depth knob. So that makes it so that you can hear that the filter is being opened up. A little bit of turn up the filters. You can hear that the filter's frequency, the cutoff, is opening up a little bit and then trailing back off. Next up, it's also controlling the volume. It does this through a low-pass gate. It's a very simple module. It doesn't really have any panel controls in the front. It just goes on when the envelope generator is on, and then off when it's off. It lets us shape the contour of the sound. And it uses a Vactrol, which is an LED with a light-dependent resistor that are sealed in a light-tight environment. So that when and it basically just flashes the light, and the light then opens up the resistor, which lets current come through. Lastly, we have one of my favorite parts, the low-frequency oscillator. This does basically the same thing as the oscillator, where it goes up and down and up and down. But while the oscillator does this very, very quickly at audio rates, the LFO is very slow. When you see on the, if you can see the panel, there's a light that shows you the range and how fast the LFO is going. It has a switchable range from kind of fast to slow, and a switchable shape from triangle to square. And it lets us modulate some of the oscillator parameters, like the tune knob and the pulse width knob I showed off earlier. So if I pull in the oscillator again with no filter resonance, if we want to vary that pulse width with this knob, you hear it moving up and down with that LFO. Turn on the release and stuff. You could also make that a square wave, so it's, instead of being a smooth up and down, it's just a harsh. Can I go faster? Go very slow. Additionally, if you want some less musical, more sound effects-y kind of Ray Guns from Mars sounds, you can modulate the frequency. So that's this tune knob I showed earlier. If you want to, you can make it. Now this can be used for anything from vibrato square wave. interesting kind of sounds. You can tune that to be a chord, do all sorts of crazy stuff. But the LFO lets you control those parameters. And then finally, here's just a closer look at the front panel for everyone who doesn't have a video yet. Again, these are the controls. If I can point to it, you can see in the top left, we have the LFO controls with the rate, the switchable range, and the shape. The tune is a big knob, so you can make sure you tune it accurately with the frequency modulation from the LFO. Pulse width PWM, the filter controls in a line, envelope controls in a line, and then those 5 jacks in a row correspond to each mixer channel. So now I want to switch over to a kind of more demo of what this all sounds like in context, because while it's cool making little space sounds on their own, they sound especially nice if you can have all of them going at once, making some, music. So we're going to switch over to some video in just a moment. And so just give me 1 second here to swap over the video. Let's see. Oh, can you turn off the background?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Okay. So 3 dots.
Let's make sure we can get this.
I don't know where it is here.
I think it's under
I think maybe when you hover over, like turn the
device
camera back on. That's what it
maybe
is on my device.
scroll down over here.
It's gonna change it.
Here, can I switch noise suppression to low just to make sure people can hear this? It's too off real quick.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Okay. Turn it on. Yeah.
All right, hello again. Just angle this more here. I do want to warn, it's not that, you can't quite see it that big, but there are flashing lights, so if you're photosensitive to flashing lights or epilepsy, just, exercise some discretion here, just to make sure you don't. Yeah, so. Just for some special thanks.
Give me 1 second.
There we go, just one more slide over. Lastly, yes, last part, I want to give some special thanks to some people because this was a big project. So firstly, special thanks to Derek Holzer for helping me out weekly with circuits and ideas and acting as my offsite advisor. It's been super helpful, meeting with me weekly on Zoom. It's been wonderful to work with you, Derek. Dr. Stanford for acting as my faculty advisor, keeping me on track with all the official stuff, the administrivia, as you could say it. all that nonsense. Pete Hartman for help with KeyCAD, schematics, and layout. The Cobalt Dream isn't actually completely finished. It's going to eventually be a DIY kit that people can build their own, and it's going to be on a physical, hard soldered circuit board that will be much smaller and easier to put into anything.
How small will it be?
How small will it be? I have a little cardboard thing here for the in-person people. It's about 30 HP of Eurorack units, but about this big for everyone in person. And it will just be able to fit in the most standard cases. But I've been working on laying that out with KeyCAD, and Pete has been helping me out a ton. It's been very helpful. Kikis Morera for just giving me constant feedback and a lot of encouragement throughout the project. Also been very helpful. My parents for encouragement and funding for everything. And then Renee Schmitz, Ken Stone, Sam Battle, and many, many others for all the schematics. I couldn't have designed all of this all on my own, and having all these free online resources have really helped me for getting through it. And then lastly, everyone here for listening. And those are all the end credits. So yes, any questions? Yes?
Is there a place online where we can find out more information about the Cobalt Dream and track your future progress?
Well, so I am in the process of working on getting a GitHub page and various other things, but I do have a Google Drive. If you look at any of my blog posts, I have an engineering journal that is just a Google Drive, a Google document that is constantly being updated. It'll have all the newest information, and when the GitHub is eventually up, it will be in that journal. It has everything since way back in September when I started working on the project, complete with pictures, videos, sound demos, so you can see the entire thing from start to finish and any further information. Any other questions? Yes?
You said that in the beginning you said it was based on the Roland SH-101.
Yes.
How, and I see you're wearing a SH-101 t-shirt. How close is it to the SH-101? How is it different?
So in terms of the SOH101, it's actually very, very, very similar in terms of just the different components. Obviously, it doesn't use exactly the same schematics for everything. It uses the same oscillator core. It's got the same idea with the mixer that has everything, but it has some small differences here and there, such as the lack of a noise circuit, having the two sub-waveforms separate. There's not a keyboard and plastic housing, obviously, and there's not as many LFO shapes, but it does add to it the voltage controlled mixer so that it's more equipped to be a Eurorack module, so it's more modular. But in general, it's very, very similar though. It's very close. Yes?
What does schematics refer to? Is it just the physical layout and display?
So the schematics refers to the actual, so the electrical components. Basically, whenever you make a circuit, right, you need to plan out all the different connections between the resistors and the capacitors and the operational amplifiers and all that. And the schematic drawing, it's more accurately it's called a schematic drawing because it's just a drawing of all the connections of how everything is pieced together. And so those will let you, if you wanted to make your own Cobalt Dream or even modify and change certain parts of it, you could freely do that and have all the, basically it shows exactly how it works from the inside. So those are the different schematics. Yes?
So while creating the prototype, what section was the most difficult to initially set up?
Well, so most of it, the hardest part, I would say for me, definitely one of the biggest challenges was the voltage controlled mixer here. It's actually basically the only part of it that is almost 100% my own design. And it was actually at Derek's encouragement that I go for like a more interesting mixer than just something very basic. And so that took me a very long time to just troubleshoot, get the thing based off all the data sheets and all that. So it took me a really long time to just troubleshoot that. But most of my time was spent, very little time was spent, there was time spent getting the schematics, making the strip boards, but most of it was just troubleshooting it and figuring out what broke where and how to fix it. So yeah, any other questions? Alrighty, well then, I think that's a wrap. Thank you so much for coming, listening, and all that.